Well, hello, Miami Dolphin fans, and welcome to another episode of Pick Six with David Bearman. I'm Josh Katzker from DolphinsTalk.com, and joining me, as always, is the deputy editor of sports betting for ESPN.com and longtime family friend from Pembroke Pines, Florida, David Bearman. David, how are you?
Good. Happy to be here. Happy to be talking to you as a member of the first place Miami Dolphins, solo first place Miami Dolphins.
That's right.
Good feeling, and let's milk that for as much as we can. Hopefully through Sunday, if not longer. But first place Miami Dolphins.
That's right. The plan is that it's at least another week of sitting atop the AFC East all by ourselves. That's the plan at this point. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. It's a big matchup this Sunday. We'll get into it, taking a look at that game from a bettor's perspective. But first, let's reflect on last week. How'd you feel about the Dolphins' performance against the Patriots?
I mean, for the most part, I felt good about it. The game went kind of about how I thought it would be. I told you on the show that I liked the under. It never really threatened the over. It was two teams trying to find an identity, and I've used it a lot recently, and it debuted on this show last week where I compared the Patriots this year to the Dolphins of last year. Rookie quarterback, not a lot of weapons, strong defense to keep you in the game, and that's exactly what we saw out of the Patriots week one. We saw a rookie quarterback, Mac Jones, who looked pretty good, but for the most part, he was dinking and dunking around the field because the offensive coordinator didn't trust him to open the offense, and rightfully so. It was his first NFL start. Go back to last year, same thing with Tua. A lot of dinking and dunking, conservative offense, one with defense, and that's what the Patriots were there for. They were basically going to win that game by holding the Dolphins to a couple of field goals and then a drive to start the game and a drive to start the second half. But the Dolphin defense, got to give them credit. It was like a bend but don't break defense. If I had any concerns, it was the fact that they really didn't do a great job stopping the run until they needed to at the end. And I'd like to see some more consistency out of the offense. The first drive of the game for the Dolphins was one of the best drives I've seen in the last 20 years, quite honestly. That's how good that drive was. And then they repeated it in the second half. Great drives to begin each halves. In between, they had not much. And that is a little bit of a concern because you kind of wonder, in the first opening of the game, they did a little bit of no huddle, a little pick up the pace. Let's go, let's go, let's go. And the Patriots had no answers. But then for the next 4 or 5 drives, it was 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. So you got to wonder why they got away from that. I know you can't push the pace all game long or else you're going to run out of steam. They did it again in the second half and scored. But at the end of the day, they won with the same formula they won with last year with an opportunistic defense who forced 4 fumbles, recovered 2. And hey, we spent all offseason worried about whether the X-Man, Xavier Howard, would be with the Dolphins, whether they'd sign him, whether they'd give him the money that the guy who should have won Defensive Player of the Year has earned. And by the way, they paid him, and then he delivered, forcing that fumble when the game looked like it was lost. At the end of the day, they won the game. They went into Foxborough, a place that they had only won twice in the last 15 years, got the W. They're in first place. They have the opportunity this week to put a stamp on their division by beating the Buffalo Bills and taking a 2-game lead over pretty much everybody in the field. Obviously, the Jets play the Patriots, but Miami has already beaten the Patriots, so it would be a key win there. I guess if there was any other concerns with the Dolphins, it would be the fact that they couldn't stop the run early, let the Patriots control the game. Anytime you see 40 minutes of time of possession on the other side of things, that worries you. But they overcame that, and they won. And there's a lot of things you got to like. Waddle looked great. I thought Tua had some good moments. Gatskin was great with catching the ball out of the backfield. And, overall, they did what they needed to do. And I'm not sure you survive that all season because you're going to face better teams than New England. But at the end of the day, you look at the standings, and they got to win, and New England has lost.
That's right. It's a tough place to win in Foxborough, and the Dolphins did what they needed to do in Nana. They've won 2 out of the last 3 that they've played up there, which is a pretty good trend. And, now the Dolphins need to go buck a trend because they've now lost 5 straight games to the Buffalo Bills. They have not yet beaten Buffalo during Brian Flores' tenure as head coach of the Miami Dolphins. And so now they've got an opportunity, and we're going to see on Sunday just how much the Dolphins have closed the gap on the Bills for the top of the AFC East. I mentioned on the Same Old Dolphin show this week here at DolphinsTalk.com that, I think the Dolphins took bigger steps forward as a football team in this offseason than Buffalo did. And so I would expect that the Dolphins are closer to the Bills than they were last season. The question is, are they good enough to knock them off? And that remains to be seen. That is what we're going to have to take a look at this weekend. And so what we're going to do is we're going to dive in, take a look at some of the player props for this game as the Bills come to Miami to take on the Miami Dolphins. And then we'll go around the league as we do every week and pick 6 of the best bets that you like this week in week 2 of the NFL slate. So let's start by looking at some of these Buffalo Bills players. And the first one that we're going to look at is Josh Allen. The numbers for him are over under 25.5 completions, 290 in the air, and 1.5 touchdowns, and 32.5 rushing yards. How are you feeling about what kind of numbers Josh Allen is going to put up against the Dolphins, keeping in mind that he absolutely torched the Dolphins last year?
Yeah, if Josh Allen does what he did last year, then all those are going to be overs. But I do feel like the Dolphins, hopefully with an offseason to prepare for what was pretty much a disaster against Buffalo last year, especially in week 17, where they had a shot at the playoffs and got blown out right there by Buffalo, allowing 56 points. I don't expect a repeat of that. The Buffalo is a pass-first offense, so I would always bet the overs on most Josh Allen props. I think he does hit over 25.5 completions. And of course, if he does do that, that means if he gets to the point where he's going 25 to 30 completions, that usually means they're needing to pass late and they're not trying to run out the clock, which would be a good thing for the Dolphins. 290 pass yards, that's a lot. And the Dolphins don't give up big chunks of yardage in the air. They'll give up the dink and the dunk, as you saw last week, in the bend but don't break or almost don't break defense. I would take a little bit of the under on Josh Allen. I don't see Buffalo passing for over 300 yards against the Dolphins. I see them having a little bit more success on the ground, especially with Allen, which is why I would take the over 32.5 rush yards. So if I had to pinpoint it, I would say Josh Allen's probably in the neighborhood of 26 of 40 for probably 270 yards. Probably take the over in touchdowns, because if Buffalo scores, it's not going to be on the ground. It's going to be Allen throwing it to his bevy of wide receivers. So I would take the over in most of the passing stuff and the over in the 32.5, but I would probably take the under in passing yards, because again, they're not going to be passing for 60 yards at a pop. It'll be 10 here, 10 there, which will add up over time, but completions are a lot easier to get in that world than it would be to get the chunks of yards.
Yeah, I expect the Dolphins are going to be bringing a lot of pressure for Josh Allen, and he's going to be hitting those shots underneath. I believe that's where he's going to have a lot of room. And there's one particular prop that we're going to get to in a moment that I think is very likely to hit an over. Is that this next one? Maybe, maybe not. Devin Singletary, 36.5 rushing yards, 2.5 receptions for 17.5 yards, over under on these figures. But for a team that, as you mentioned, doesn't really like to run the ball unless it's Josh Allen on a scramble.
Yeah, and if you look at the game plan last week with the Patriots dinking and dunking against the Dolphins, they didn't have much success down the field. Obviously a rookie quarterback, as opposed to Josh Allen, who obviously knows what to do. I'd probably go under on the rush yards. If he gets it, it might be the first play of the game, just like it was for Damon Harris last week, where he ran off for 30 on the first play and then didn't amount to much the rest of the game. I would lean towards the over in receiving yards because of the dink and dunk nature, but I don't think Singletary is going to be the guy that rushes all over the Dolphins. I'm more concerned about Josh Allen doing it than Singletary.
Yeah, that's a fair point. This next one is the one that I'm a little bit. I think it's very good chance that it's going to come in on the over on all of them, and that's Cole Beasley. 4.5 receptions, 52.5 yards. I feel like this is a guy who's going to feast, because the Dolphins are going to be very focused on not getting beat over the top by Stephon Diggs, and I think that's just going to open up some room for Cole Beasley underneath.
I totally agree. And if you look at what the Bills did last week against Pittsburgh in a game where they struggled mightily on offense, Cole Beasley had 13 targets. And, that's nothing to sneeze at. 13 targets is a lot of targets, which is why I'm surprised that this was 4.5 and 52.5. And whereas I don't expect Beasley to get 13 targets again, if he comes anywhere near that, he's going to hit the overs in both of these numbers. Beasley is the type of guy that could easily, without even realizing it, get 7 for 70 right off the bat and a touchdown, and that would be 2 easy overs here. And I actually like Beasley more in this game than the guy you just mentioned in Stephon Diggs, which if you throw that one up there, I would actually take the under on Stephon Diggs, because I don't think Howard in the Dolphins secondary is going to get beat deep. I know they did last year against this team, but that's put that in the past. You saw what they did last week against New England, they did not allow the deep ball. So will Diggs get 6.5, 7 balls? He could get up there, but I don't think he's going to clear 86.5 yards unless it's one big pass. I would play Beasley overs, Diggs under. I can freely admit that I have Beasley on my bench in my fantasy team, and I'm heavily leaning towards starting him this week because just the situation that arises with him being in the slot and getting dink and dunk, he could easily go 7 or 8 catches for 70 or 80 yards.
Out of curiosity, I got to know who you're thinking about benching in favor of Cole Beasley.
I have Cortland Sutton on my team, who didn't do much last week, and our league is set up where we have wide receivers and tight ends are combined into one, and we have 3 wide receiver spots, 2 running back spots, and 1 flex spot. My team that I have drafted is built more where I only have 2 running backs that are worth starting in Alvin Kamara and Myles Gaskin, which I know we'll hit on in a minute. But I have about 6 receivers I can rotate through. And, when you're starting Darren Waller, who you saw had 19 targets the other day. I got Travis Kelce, who you're obviously always going to start. And then after that, I do have Jamar Chase, who did awesome last week. And then last week I started Sutton, and I'm not sure he's fully back from injury yet. And although Jared Jeudy is not going to play, so Sutton should have more, my decision basically is going to come down to whether starting Sutton or Beasley. Likely a game time decision. Right now I'm leaning Beasley just because the guy got 13 targets last week.
Yeah, I think that's a smart play, although, yeah, Sutton is certainly going to, I would expect him to get fed a little bit more in the absence of Jerry Jeudy. We'll briefly touch on Emmanuel Sanders. As of now, I think he's still questionable for Sunday. Don't know whether or not he's going to play. 4.5 receptions, 47.5 receiving yards. I mean, it's pretty standard. It's pretty much right down the middle. And, I don't know that you make a play on this one.
You really can't until you find out if he's active. If he's active, you have to reassess what you're doing with Beasley and Diggs, with that third weapon out there. If he's not, that kind of makes you want to take more on Beasley. Right now, it's a total pass for me because I don't know if the guy's even playing. And if he does play, I don't know if he's 100%. So it's not someone I really want to put any money on.
Well, let's go to the other side of the ball. Let's take a look at the Miami Dolphins, and we'll start with their quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa. Over-under for Tua this week is 21.5, 242.5, 1.5 touchdowns, and 13.5 rushing yards. Last week, for those counting at home, he went 16 of 27 for 202, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He did have 4 carries for a combined 1 yard, but he did pop one of those runs into the end zone for a touchdown. So how are we feeling about Tua in this one, with the understanding that where all of us were coming into this game with the idea that this is it. The Dolphins were going to have their full complement of offensive weapons on the field for the first time altogether, with Will Fuller making his Dolphins debut. We learned this week that Fuller is dealing with a personal matter and will not be playing this Sunday as he deals with whatever that issue is. We don't have a lot of clarity on what it is. We just know that he's not going to be with the team this week. So the Dolphins are largely going to look very much how they look last week, although there's some optimism that Preston Williams, who was a scratch last week for the Dolphins, will be a go on Sunday against Buffalo.
I think these numbers are honestly really fair and really where they should be. And you mentioned that last week he was 16 of 27 for 202, and none of those numbers come anywhere close to these set over-unders. But you also have to keep in mind the Dolphins only had the ball for 22 minutes last week. They, kind of were dominated time of possession by New England. And, if it's the same type of game, then I wouldn't expect Tua to come to these numbers. But I do think, and it's going to be weird because I'm going to play a lot of overs on the wide receivers that are mentioned next. It's still hard. Like, the Dolphins are not a team that passes for 250 and 300 yards. They haven't done it under Tua. Maybe this is the game they do it, maybe not. I see pretty much kind of around that number. Like, Tua should be about 20 for 30. So lean towards the under. Instead of passing yards, I'd probably lean towards the over, because if he got 202 last week with only 20-something minutes of possession, if they get anywhere near 30 minutes, he should hit about 250. I'd be surprised if he doesn't hit 250 yards every single week this year, unless you only have the ball for 20 minutes. And in the offset that they are getting blown out early, it's going to be a pass fest left and right, which would have Tua have 25, 30 completions and, 300 yards trying to come from behind. Hopefully that's not the case. You hope that they're able to run the ball and run out the clock when they need to, which gives me pause. But I do think with playing Buffalo, it's going to be more of a shootout, not necessarily all the way shootout, but more of an aggressive offense than what we saw in the New England game, which was week 1, kind of a and I said it on this show, you're going to see sort of a battle of attrition with two young offenses that are trying to, with one side, you had a whole bunch of rookies and no weapons. On the other side, you had new weapons and Tua trying to get, this offense rolling. The game pretty much played out exactly how I thought. I think to see a little bit of a higher scoring game this week, a little bit more passing, I think Tua will get closer to those numbers, but I would go slightly under on completions, slightly over on passing. I mean, the touchdown number is spot on because he ran one in and threw one in. He could get two easily. And I would play the under on rush yards. I don't see him yet ready to break one out there. He had a long of 3 last week and only 4 carries. So I wouldn't expect much on the ground from him.
Yeah, especially as we've seen the Dolphins are kind of leaning into this idea of bringing in Jacoby Brissett and playing some Wildcat. It seems unlikely that we're going to see a lot out of Tua from rushing standpoint just yet. Let's take a look at some of these other player props for the Dolphins. Devontae Parker, 3.5 receptions, 49.5 receiving yards. He was the leading receiver for the Dolphins last week with 6 receptions, 81 yards. How you feeling about this?
I like the over here. Only because I don't necessarily think Parker's going to have a huge game, but I just think these numbers are too low. Even in a week where the Dolphins only had the ball for 20 minutes and passed for 200 yards, Parker still had 4 catches and 81 yards. So he hit these numbers even on a week where the Dolphin offense wasn't explosive. So, and if there's, we just mentioned it a minute ago, I think the Dolphins will have more success on offense and more of a shootout game than last week. So I think Parker does what he did last week. If he does 4 for 81 again, you got 2 overs there. And I'm actually surprised that it's all of these guys are 3.5 because it's not much to have your number 1 and number 2 receiver get 4 catches. It's not. I mean, he had 7 targets last week and Waddle had 6. I expect both these guys to get 4 and 5 passes.
Yeah, I think this is a situation where bookmakers just don't yet know what to make of this Dolphins offense. I just think that it's just too early, and you just haven't really seen what this offense wants to be yet. So I think they're kind of playing it a little bit close to the vest at this point. At least that's the best thing that I can come up with. But why shouldn't everybody else take advantage?
I mean, I know without Fuller, you're thinking you got Parker, Waddle, Gaskin. Like each one of these guys is 3.5. If they all get to 4, you're still only talking about 12 completions. I do think that Mike Gesicki is going to have a bigger role than, he has to. He had 0 role last week because Belichick took him out of the game. But even if Gesicki steals 2 or 3 from what last week was, Tua had 16 completions and Parker, Waddle, and Gaskin combined for 13 of them. I don't see that not happening this week. So, I know we're going to go through the list, but I would take over 3.5 on all 3 of those players between Parker, Waddle, and Gadsden, unless all of a sudden Mike Gesicki goes 7 for 70, which I don't see happening against the Bills. So I would expect the numbers that you saw out of Waddle, Parker, and Gaskin last week, which combined for 13 catches in the neighborhood of 170 yards, which is about 80% of what Tua had. I expect that to happen again.
Yeah, and here's Waddle's number, 3.5, 46.5. Again, right there on the money. I think he's easily going over on both of these. Gesicki wasn't even listed on DraftKings this week. They did not even have a player prop listed for him because of, I presume, just how much New England just took him out of the game last week.
But even if you gave Gaskin, Waddle, Parker, and Gesicki, all gave them 4, you're only talking about 16. And we're projecting that he's going to get close to 21. Yeah, you might get an Albert Wilson. You might get a Preston Williams. You might get an Ahmed out of the backfield. But at the end of the day, it's not asking a lot for those 4 guys to get 4 catches.
No.
So.
Not at all. And I think originally the game plan would have been to incorporate Will Fuller into this and then to use Fuller and Waddle to stretch the field and open up some space underneath for Gesicki and for Devontae Parker, for Preston Williams as well. But now without having Fuller on the field, can Waddle do that on his own? Can you use Albert Wilson in that role? Can you use Jakeem Grant in that role at receiver? I think we're hopefully beyond the place where Jakeem Grant is out there as a pass catcher, but that's neither here nor there. Let's take a look at Myles Gaskin. 3.5 receptions, 19.5 receiving yards, 48.5 rushing yards, 22.5. I don't know why we've got receiving yards twice. The number is 22.5 receiving yards. That's the number that should be there. Last week, Gaskin did carry the ball 9 times for 49 yards. He didn't even get to double-digit carries, but he did have 9 carries for 49 yards. He also added 5 receptions for 27 yards. I mean, so when it comes to the all-purpose yards, Gaskin is a pretty reliable weapon for the Dolphins to be able to get some nice chunks of yardage there, catching the ball out of the backfield.
Yeah, I would play Miles the exact same way I played him last week. You and I talked about how I drafted him on my fantasy team in a 2-point PPR, and he delivered with 5 catches. I only had 1 in the first half and 4 in the second half. I'd play him the exact same way. I think he's going to get 4 or 5 catches, 30 yards receiving. I would take the overs there. And until the Dolphins show that they can run the ball, I'm not going to take him over 48.5 yards. They had a decent game last week, and he still only hit 49. There's too many other guys on the field the Dolphins can run with, whether it's Jacoby Brissett in short line situations. They bring in Malcolm Brown at the goal line, or you have Ahmed, every once in a while, who played a lot in the first half. It's just hard to bet on Gaskin getting over 48, 49 yards until you know he's going to have more than 9 carries. I mean, 9 for 49 is one heck of a game in terms of yards per rush, but he still only had 9 carries. So maybe if the Dolphins get a big lead and they run him 15, 16, 17 times, that's just not the way the Dolphins play. So I will take him as the patch catching back overs, and I will continue to take him under rushing, although he could break one at any point in time. But Gaskin is the type of guy who's going to get 9 for 45 every single week. He's best used first down back, third down catches. That's how they play him, and that's how they'll continue to play him.
I'm looking forward to seeing if Gaskin can have a big day against Buffalo. I think the Dolphins need him to do that. It's going to be vital to their success on Sunday. So now let's get into the games themselves. But before we do that, we got to take a look at how you fared last week. And it was a mixed bag, I think, last week. You went 4-3. You did successfully take the Dolphins to win outright, and you hit the under 43.5 in the Dolphins game. You picked Washington +1 against the Chargers. Of course, the football team fell in that one. You picked the under in the Rams, and with the Rams hosting the Bears. And then I think that the final score there was like 34-14 or something. So they did go over. You picked Houston successfully +3 at home against Jacksonville. They won that game outright. You picked Cincinnati +3 over Minnesota. Again, Cincinnati winning outright in that one. You did pick Buffalo -6.5. Buffalo, of course, ended up losing that game at home to Pittsburgh. You did successfully pick Cleveland +6 against Kansas City. So while Cleveland lost the game, they did only lose the game by 4 points. So 4-3 record on the week. Not too shabby, not terrible, not the end of the world, but there's some room for improvement as we head into week 2.
I told you which ones were official plays, and you're going to make me pick 6 every week, plus the Dolphin game. I can tell you in the ESPN.com chalk column, which you should go check out at ESPN Chalk, I went 3-2 in the official plays. Buffalo was not an official play. Washington was. The under in the Rams game was there until the Rams converted 4 consecutive 3rd and longs in the fourth quarter, scored a garbage touchdown they didn't need, won over the total. Crap happens. But at the end of the day, I won money. So if you tailed my bets, you would have won money. That's honestly what matters. It was in the green and not the red. And I'm not here to tell you I'm going to do that all 17, 18 weeks. But hey, there were 5 official plays that went 3-2, 4-3 overall. Hit the big upsets, though. Hitting the Bengals, Texans, and Dolphins were all big upsets.
That was a good one. There were quite a few people in the survivor pool, the Dolphins Talk survivor pool, who had went in on Minnesota. There were also a couple people who went in on Buffalo. And listen, I'm not mad. I went in on San Francisco. It was a good pick. It came good for me last week.
Guys in DolphinsTalk.com to listen to this program, and I would have walked them off Minnesota real quickly, like I will be in a few minutes.
There we go. Well, let's dive into it. Let's dive into the week 2 matchups. We'll start, of course, with the one featuring your Miami Dolphins at home, 3.5-point dogs, over under 48. How are we feeling about this one, Dave?
I mean, the Dolphins are at home coming off a good game. Bills need the rebound. I expect the Bills to play the Dolphins tough. They obviously dominated them last year. Still didn't like what I see last week. You got the home team and the hook. I'm going to take the Dolphins +3.5. Not convinced they win outright, but I think if the Dolphins play good on defense and can get some stuff going on offense, they can compete with Buffalo. And the 3.5, anytime you get through that key number of 3 and get the hook, it's something that you honestly have to look at. We have a column on ESPN Chalk where we guarantee a pick on every single game. It was late into the night last night, and we were missing one game, and that was the Buffalo Bills versus the Miami Dolphins. And I said, I will begrudgingly take the Dolphins if you force me to. Luckily, somebody else came in there and did it for me, so I didn't have to write up that Dolphins are going to win and look like crap when they lose. But I do like the 3.5 here for the Dolphins at home.
It's going to be a tight one. If you've listened to this week's DolphinsTalk.com daily on Friday morning or this week's episode of the Same Old Dolphin Show, I picked the Dolphins to win this game outright. So get hyped. All right. The next one is the New England Patriots traveling to the Meadowlands to take on the disgusting New York Jets. And the over-under is 43. Patriots 6-point favorites in this one. What do you like on this?
Is one of my favorite plays of the week and official play. I will be taking the under on this one. We already hit on New England, Mac Jones, rookie quarterback, conservative offense. Josh McDaniels not opening it up just yet. We watched every play of that game. A lot of dump offs, short passes. I mentioned how they look like the Dolphins of last year with no weapons and a strong defense. The Patriots just aren't there yet offensively to score a lot of points. You go on the other side, the Jets, that's a whole nother problem when it comes to the Jets offense. If you watched any of that game last week, my apologies if you did have to watch it. Luckily, there were other games called the Red Zone channel, so you didn't have to watch it. But the Gang Green had 82 total yards halfway through the third quarter last week against not exactly the 85 Bears. We're talking about the Carolina Panthers here. So under Zach Wilson, another rookie quarterback, they struggled mightily. None of the first 9 drives, only one of the first 11 drives went for over 40 yards. Some people look at the box score and say, oh, well, they finished strong with 2 touchdown drives of the last 3 drives, including a 98-yarder as the clock ran out. At that point, the game was over. The Panthers had a 2-score lead. They really didn't care. So I don't really like the Jets offense. I don't really like the Patriots offense. Patriots have a good defense. Throw one more stat out you. In the last 5 years, 40 road games for the Patriots, 27 of them. That's 67.5%. 27 of the last 40 Patriot road games went under the total. You might say, well, they don't have Tom Brady last year. Well, you know what? I'm talking about a 5-year total. 40 games, which 32 of them consisted of Tom Brady at quarterback. Obviously, he wasn't there last year. Take those 8 games out. The other 32 games, Tom Brady was there. Still hit 67% of the time. Obviously, it's a Bill Belichick thing. Teams under Bill Belichick on the road, they play unders. They don't allow a lot of points. I expect this to be very similar to what happened last week with the Dolphin game, a low-scoring game. Patriots probably covered. This is probably a 20-10 type game, maybe even 24-10. I don't see this coming up to 43, or I wouldn't be taking the under here. 2 rookie quarterbacks, 2 decent defenses. Take the under.
Oh, you're making me think about benching Corey Davis this week. Corey Davis is one of the few New York Jets players that I like, but maybe I got to change my mind. Maybe I got to change my mind in the league where I have him starting in my flex.
He had a very good fourth quarter last week.
Yeah, hey, it counts. It counts. Next up, we got the Cincinnati Bengals, fresh off a victory over one NFC North team, traveling to Chicago to take on the Chicago Bears, who are -2 at home. Over under 45. What do you like here?
I've done smarter things in life than take the Bengals
2 weeks in a row.
Weeks.
Oh,
but I'm taking the Bengals in back-to-back weeks. Last week on the show, we joked I took the Bengals and the Texans. What's this guy thinking? Both covered, both won outright. I'm not ready to buy a Joe Burrow jersey just yet, but the Bengals under Joe Burrow, people forget that he was the quarterback last year. 7 of the 11 games he started they covered. 7 of 11, all but one of them against Jacksonville. They were the underdogs. They've added Jamar Chase, who looked phenomenal last week. Just as important, I don't like anything to do with the Chicago Bears. I faded him a lot last year, which was positive, although they did make the playoffs, but anybody can make the playoffs at 8-8. They were not a good team last year. You made money fading them. There was nothing that I saw against the Rams that made me think that the Bears are any better than they were last year. And as long as Matt Nagy is going to die on the hill known as Andy Dalton, I'm going to continue fading the Chicago Bears. At some point, he's got to throw Fields in there. You may see him this week, which may cost me the cover if Fields comes in more often. But the Bears, not really good in this spot. They have failed to cover in 8 of their last 10 games as a home favorite, all under Matt Nagy. Full transparency, the Bengals are not a good road team. They've won 1 time in the last 16 games on the road. I'm not asking them to win. I'm asking them to cover. What are they over that same stretch? They're 8-8 against the spread in the last 16 road games. Obviously much better than the 1-15 straight up record. I personally think the Bengals are the better team here, and you're getting points. I got it at 3. You have it at 2. We may have to have a text message off the air if it finds up in the middle here. I have it personally bet at 3, so I'm going to stick to that number. I see this game being very similar to last week where they took Minnesota overtime. They led most of the game. Minnesota tied it late. Bengals won in OT. This could be another down-to-the-wire game. Lean under, take the Bengals. Not saying they're going to be 2-0, but if they are, it's against Minnesota and Chicago, so don't go buying Bengals playoff tickets just yet.
That's good advice. From there, we go to the Las Vegas Raiders, fresh off an overtime victory in one of the stupidest games you'll ever see on Monday night, where David was running around organizing the mega cast for ESPN Monday night. So he was just running around like a chicken with his head cut off. And listen, the Raiders ended up getting the big win, but they are 6.5-point underdogs as they travel to Pittsburgh to take on the 1-0 Pittsburgh Steelers, who are fresh off a big road victory in Buffalo. The over-under on this game is 47. What do you like here?
I like taping this show earlier because I got it, again, 5.5 for the Steelers before they announced that Josh Jacobs wasn't going to play, and now it's up to 6.5. So again, when I sent you the pick, it was 5.5. This is a absolute narrative type game. We talk about narrative versus numbers. There's a couple of different ways to look at sports betting. You can play all statistics. You can play all narratives. Let's call it what it is. The Raiders won a ridiculously stupid game late Monday night in Las Vegas. Now, I have no idea what the team did afterwards. People do whatever they do. Whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Late game Monday night. I'm sure they celebrated for quite a bit of time. Now they got to travel cross country to play Pittsburgh at 10 a.m. local time, 1 o'clock Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. Teams going west to east after playing a Monday night game don't statistically do well. We're talking about Vegas here as well. They had no business winning that game to begin with. That was more about the Ravens coughing it up than anything. They're missing a couple of offensive linemen. Now they're missing Josh Jacobs. I want nothing to do with the Las Vegas Raiders this week. Pittsburgh, on the other hand, took a team that many have been favored to win the AFC title in the Buffalo Bills, dominated them pretty much throughout the game, held their offense in check in the first half, had some offense in the second half. I'm not sure Pittsburgh is as good as they looked last week, but they are much better than Las Vegas. Vegas hangover, here we go. I like Pittsburgh minus 5.5. Nothing about the Raiders excites me this week. Even 6.5, I would give it as well. Pittsburgh is a good play this week.
All right, well, let's go to the aforementioned Minnesota Vikings, who lost a tough game in Cincinnati. They now go to Arizona. That's your reward. Your reward for losing to Joe Burrow is you get to go to Arizona and deal with Kyler Murray and that high-octane offense of the Arizona Cardinals. Arizona 3.5-point favorites at home. Over-under in this game is 50.5. What do you like as the Vikings head to the desert?
This is a perfect matchup for me because it's a team that I'm absolutely in love with, the Arizona Cardinals, where I took them over 8 wins, 6.5 to 1 to win the NFC West. I said it on our preseason show. I said it again last week. I love the Arizona Cardinals. I should have taken them last week in Tennessee, but I kind of said, I already have enough invested on the Cardinals, so I'll wait and see how they do. They even exceeded my wildest expectations. On the flip side, Minnesota Vikings, I faded them last week versus the Bengals. That tells you what I think of the Minnesota Vikings if I'm choosing the Bengals over them. Now they're playing a better team. Like you said, your gift for losing to the Bengals is to go to Arizona and play them. The Vikings did nothing to impress me. They tied the game on a 53-yard field goal. Then they had a chance to win it, and they fumbled in field goal range. I think Mike Zimmer is a safe bet to potentially be the first coach to be let go this year, only because the expectations are higher in Minnesota than some of the other teams in the league. Minnesota 6-11 against the number since the beginning of last season, tied for the worst in football. They're facing a Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins express here. Could there be a letdown for Arizona after what they did in Tennessee? Sure. That's the narrative. There could always be a letdown. Even with a letdown, the perfect solution for that is to play a not good Minnesota Vikings team. I have this game as closer to 6 or 7. Gladly take it at 3.5, buy the hook down to 3, and send it in.
All right, there it is. So we've got Arizona, and we're 2 games left. Next up is what many people think is the game of the week. The Kansas City Chiefs, 3.5-point favorites on the road against the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens, who are very, very beat up and managed to give away a game that they had an opportunity to win last week. And that stupid Monday night game. Anyway, over under on this one, 54.5. Who do you like here?
And as we stated last week, those first 4 plays were my official plays in the column and ones I've bet already. This game is going to be a wait and see approach. I'm going to, it's a Sunday night game. I have some extra time to think about it. But the more I actually sit there and think about it, the less I want to wait. Baltimore did everything in their power to give that game away against a lesser team in Las Vegas. Now they face arguably the best team in football in the Kansas City Chiefs. The only pause that I have is the Chiefs have, as good as they are, back-to-back Super Bowl appearances, they have not been a good team against the spread. You saw it last week in Cleveland, getting down 2 scores, coming back and winning and not covering. Believe it or not, the Kansas City Chiefs are 2-10 against the spread in the last 12 games, the worst record in football if you go back 12 games. That being said, sometimes you got to look past the stats and look at, again, the narrative. Ravens beat up, a lot of guys down. They went into Las Vegas, not exactly the team I would want to play a week later in Kansas City. I'm going to be rolling with Kansas City. Haven't decided yet if it's going to be an official play. It might be a teaser. It might be a parlay. You get the benefit of it being a Sunday night game that you can wait a little bit. But, if you saw what Derek Carr ended up doing to the Baltimore Ravens, what do you think Pat Mahomes is going to do? Because the Ravens secondary is in trouble. They have a lot of players out. I'm not sold on their running game. As you saw, all of a sudden, Tyson Williams was great in the first half. They didn't use him at all in the second half. I think the Ravens are a mess right now, and I wouldn't want to be a mess going and facing Kansas City. But it is Baltimore. It is one of the best coaches in football. It is a home game. It is at night. Not totally sold on going KC left. You asked me to pick 6 games. This would be my 5th game. Should I have to pick 6, I would pick the Kansas City Chiefs.
There it is. All right, final game of the week. New Orleans Saints, 3.5-point favorites on the road, taking on Sam Darnold and the undefeated Carolina Panthers.
This is a weird game because you got to think the Saints are the better team here. You saw what they did to the Packers. A whole lot of people are betting the Saints because of that. But read the news the last few days. 8 Saints coaches are out with COVID. They have not been able to practice together as a team. They've had to do Zoom meetings with coaches. That's not an appetite for a National Football League game on Sunday where you're not with your coaches. Game plans are difficult. They're going to be missing some players as well. We still don't know the extent of the COVID breakout. All of it was vaccinated coaches, so it is what it is. But missing 8 coaches, it's not something people think about. People only look at, well, who's starting at quarterback? Who's starting at running back? Team versus team. You tried coaching an NFL team down 8 coaches. It's not a pretty sight. So I'm going to, again, you asked me to pick a 6th game. Carolina is the 6th one at home. Pretty good team. Thought they played well last week. Saints, off of the high of destroying the Green Bay Packers, come back to reality a little bit. Missing some coaches. They haven't been home yet. They're on the road because of the hurricane all the time. Haven't been home. Haven't been able to practice. Nothing good is something that I want to see out of that. I think Carolina actually can win this game. And you're getting 3 and a hook at home. Eileen, Carolina. We'll probably play them in some money line parlays with teams like the Bengals and the Dolphins that I think can win the game.
Oh, I like it. I like it. I like the spicy pick. I like the Dolphin fan picking Sam Darnold. I'm into it. And that takes us to the end of our show here in week 2. This is the end of our 3rd episode, our third show, 2nd during the NFL season. We're going to see how you do this week.
By the way, we're undefeated on the show. Just throwing that out there.
That's true. Dolphins have not lost the game since we've been doing this show. We have
not lost the game since we've been watching the show. We have not watched the game in the new Man Cave basement on the new Man Cave TV. They're undefeated since I've moved into this house.
This is fantastic. And they're undefeated since you found your Tua jersey.
They're undefeated since I found my Tua jersey. And would you believe it, listeners, that the Tua jersey was missing for a couple of weeks and it was found in the exact spot that I left it? I mean, it's amazing how that happens. It was
Isn't that always what happens?
In my closet next to all of my other jerseys. Like, who would ever look to find it in your closet next to your other jerseys?
Yeah, right. I mean, of all places,
we've done 3 shows, and the first 2 shows I wore Marino and I wore Zach Thomas, and the Tua jersey was in between both of them. I mean, like my wife always says, where are the keys? They're on the freaking key ring. Who puts keys on a key ring?
Right. Well, and my wife says, where's my phone? I say, it's in your purse. and that's where it is.
Right.
100% of the time.
Always.
Well, well, it was fun to do another show with you. We're not sure exactly what the plan is going to be for next week's show because I got the folks coming to town, and David's going to be traveling to Vegas where he's going to be hitting big on next week's bets. But we're gonna somehow, some way, we're gonna get those picks to you. We'll figure that out. Just be on the lookout. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at Amplified to Rock, at DBearman ESPN,
do you want to do
at Dolphins Talk.
You want to do a live show from Allegiant Stadium at halftime? We'll bring the phone out and say hi to everybody.
Oh man, we might have to figure out a way to set that up. We might have to figure it out. We'll get back to you on the plans. Just stay tuned. Make sure you're following us on Twitter, and you'll get the updates from there. In the meantime, happy betting. Good luck to everybody out there. Remember that this show is for entertainment purposes only, so don't come after us. But you don't have to come after us angrily unless you go against the advice that we're giving, right? Because we're gonna take care of you. We're going to take care of you. Anyway, thank you for joining us, and we will catch you next week. Take it easy, everybody. Go Dolphins.